Good morning, friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to one of my favorite days of the week. I get to spend it with my partner in crime, Emily, and we always have a great guest lined up for Medwell Unscripted. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So friends, this, as you know, we started back kind of on our fall series last week. We're talking a lot in this series about medical cannabis and the plant and how it supports cancer. We have a lot of rock stars sharing their knowledge and experience with medical cannabis and kind of how it's, last week we had a breast cancer survivor and rock star Nicole, who was talking about her journey, who she actually ended up creating her own company to support others. This week, we're talking with amazing Ruth Fisher, who she is the author. She's an author. She has all of these great things to share about helping us with dosing. So before we get started, friends, we are looking forward to you being here today. If you are here with us live, feel free to drop a question in the chat and we'll absolutely make sure that we answer it. If you are catching the replay, never fear. We will absolutely answer your question. Just post it and someone will get back to you shortly. And always look through the chat, friends, because I do drop all the links that we talk about, whether it be Ruth's book that we're going to share shortly, and all of our information about our website. So really excited to get started. So just kind of just a little bit brief. Ruth is actually, we're very, very grateful. She's out on the West Coast, so it's super early for her. So she's joining us and she looks fantastic this early in the morning. I would be like, I don't know. I definitely, I'm not even close to looking that good at 10 here. Today we're going to talk with her a little bit about, she's actually the author of the Medical Cannabis Primer, and wow, what an amazing read it is. And she also, not only that, she also has some different companies that she does some work in the cannabis field with. So we'll share about this, her expertise. So as we get started here, friends, I first want to, again, I don't even know if I said my name this morning. My name is April. And I'm with Medwell Health and Wellness. And Emily Waxman is my partner in crime. She's the director of community outreach here at Medwell. And I'm going to start off with introductions, have Emily tell a little bit about her role because, boy, her schedule is chock full. And if you're out in the community, you definitely want to stop in and see her. So Emily, share a little bit about what you're up to.
Of course. Thank you, April. So I am busy out there in the community, making sure that I'm providing education to folks about how cannabis can help them, why someone would want to obtain their medical cannabis certification, the differences between medical versus recreational. Just trying to make sure we can continue that education, help break that stigma out there of cannabis. And it is just an absolute honor to be able to be here with you today, April, and even more so to be able to have Ruth here to be able to speak to. It is just an absolute honor, Ruth. And so I will kind of take it back to you, April, so that we can kind of get going today, because there's so much stuff here to talk to Ruth about that, and we're going to cram it into 30 minutes. We could probably spend like 3 hours here today with everything that I have to talk to Ruth about. So.
All right, friends. So drum roll, and we're going to welcome Ruth Fisher, the author of the Medical Cannabis Primer. Ruth, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm an economist by training, and I had very little experience with cannabis. I had used it in college and in grad school, and it took me a long time before I felt anything. When I finally did, I'm like, okay, I see, what this is, but it's not really my thing. So I wasn't really into it. Unfortunately, I was a product of the war on drugs and very much colored by the stigma. Fast forward to 2015, my brother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and he was experiencing a tremendous amount of neuropathic pain. And he was on a lot of different pharmaceuticals as per his doctor's advice. And they were helping a little, but not providing full relief. And at one point, one of his neurologists said, I think you might be able to benefit from medical cannabis, but I can't give you any guidance. So, he had he had tried everything. And so he said, well, I'm trying this. And he started using it, and he was getting some effects. But at some point he realized that if he knew what he was doing, he could probably be getting even better effects. So as I said, I'm an economist. I have a lot of experience. I work in like market dynamics and market evolution and valuation. And I have a ton of experience in healthcare and technology. And so it was natural for him to turn to me and say, hey, he said, hey, I'm using cannabis, medical cannabis. And I'm like, really? And he said, and I'm getting some effects. It's working. And I was just really surprised. He said, can you help me figure this out? And so at that point, as I said, I was very colored by the stigma, but I said, okay, I'm just going to, try and push that aside and just kind of jump in and see what the information has to say. And so I started reading, and I'm getting little bits of insights, and I, telling my brother, try this, try this, try this, and it is working. And so there was, a method to the madness. And at some point, he's an engineer. He came up with this idea to create a technology to help other users through this process of trying to figure out which products work for them. And so at that point, as I said, he's an engineer, and he's also a photographer and a publisher, a graphic designer. So
man of many talents.
Yes.
Very complimentary. So my job was to figure out the plant and all the complexities in the plant, and to figure out, how the plant works in people. And as we know, each person is different and trying to address. So how do we figure out which types of products, plant products, are going to be right for any given individual with their particular system and medical needs? And so I did the research, and I created these algorithms, these matching algorithms. And in order to do all that, I needed a really good connected understanding of the plant and this whole process. So by the time we kind of got a working technology done, my brother's like, we have all this amazing information, and you put it together in such an amazing way, we really should release a book. So we released the book, and as I said, my brother does all the graphic design and everything. He did the layout, and he took my content and made it really beautiful. And I think that it's a tremendous guide out there. And what it is it's no new information. I don't come up with anything on my own. What I did is I said, what does the research have to say? And I took information, and of course I tried to qualify it and provide what I thought was quality, truthful information, and say, here's who I think the experts are, here's what they have to say about all these issues. And the book is a journey through understanding the plant and what's in the plant, and understanding people and how to put those two pieces together. And if you're a new user, how you go about trying to find a place to start and move towards your ideal product. So that's kind of how the book came to be.
So I'm just going to show it right here to anybody that is, interested. This, what Ruth is talking about that's exactly what I thought when I was reading it. It is just a beautifully written book, and there are beautiful graphs in here too. I even folded down the pages that I really loved, because it's for that new user. It is absolutely perfect. It is so easy to understand. It is so phenomenal for someone that is just thinking about it and just they're just on the fence of getting their certification. They don't know if they're going to be able to understand what to do when they get it. This is the perfect book to read if you're on the fence, because you will really get a good knowledge of just from soup to nuts. Very easy. I can't tell you how many times I have sat in an educational event where there are folks there that are trying to explain either the endocannabinoid system or just the process of everything. And you look around the room, and people are just glossy-eyed. They just very confused. They don't understand. And this book just explains it beautifully. And the graphs are so helpful, and the dosing and where to begin. And I mean, I think majority of us don't even know we have an endocannabinoid system. It's not something we learn in high school or anything like that. So
Right.
these are new terms for majority of us. So it is all explained in this beautiful written book. So I just have to just say how thrilled I am that you and your brother put this together, Ruth. It is such a really needed book for, the cannabis community. I mean, it really is almost like a Bible for folks that are going to be stepping into trying this for themselves.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I guess mission accomplished.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Ruth, I know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so we have our pink ribbon in our background, and Emily has pink on today. We're honoring that. So, but I want to know a little bit, if you wouldn't mind sharing kind of a little bit more information kind of on, you have a lot of different segments, but I want to talk particularly about dosing today, and kind of, so you were saying that with your brother, I mean, I think, let me back up. One of the most interesting thing to me about being in this field too is the stories that we bring. And so honestly, we actually haven't really talked I mean, we've been doing this show for 2 years, really, about multiple sclerosis and how people are using medical cannabis. We know that it's an existing condition here in Massachusetts for qualifying for a medical cannabis card, but we really actually haven't even talked about that. So, but can you talk a little bit about kind of how you went, as you were doing your research, how you kind of came up with the dosing information in the book? Because I think, lots of dispensaries, when they go in, a lot of them have patient care coordinators that will help a patient out, kind of helping them figure it out. But I also think that there's, people don't know where to start. And I think the more that we can inform people, especially as doctors and our own practice, of making sure they understand that, I think it would be helpful. So do you mind sharing a little bit of more information, kind of particularly about the dosing piece?
Absolutely. So the issue of dosing is a little more expansive. So when you're talking about cannabis, you have a lot of different substances in the plant, and the ones that we're particularly interested in are the cannabinoids and terpenes. But if we focus on the cannabinoids, there's, depending on what source you look at, some 150 or 200 different cannabinoids. Most people know THC, that's the big one. And more recently, people know about CBD. And it turns out that all these different cannabinoids and other substances in the plant work together to provide outcomes. They complement each other and they help one another. And so generally speaking, you want to be using whole plant extracts, which contain all of these compounds that nature provided together, that work together and enable each other, rather than isolates, which is where they go and they strip it out and they take, just an isolated compound. So when you're looking at dosing, really what you want is CBD and THC together, along with all the other different compounds. And if there's a notion out there, they call them ratios, where you're looking at the ratio of CBD to THC. Now, this is really, really important. This ratio is really important, but it's not standardized. And so some places, when you look at a ratio and it'll say 3 to 1, in some places that 3 to 1 means 3 parts CBD to 1 part THC. In other places, that same label will mean 3 parts THC to 1 part CBD. So you want ratios, but you also want to make sure that you're understanding what the ratio is telling you.
Right.
Generally speaking, you want the THC and CBD together. The CBD enables and potentiates all the good things from THC, and it mitigates some of the unwanted effects. And generally, when you're talking about dosing, what you really care about, the sensitivity issue, is the THC part. So the CBD, kind of push that aside for a minute. Let's focus on THC. New users should start with very, very low doses, maybe 1-2 milligrams of THC. You try that and you see how you respond. And then you can start taking it up. If the THC is giving you some effects but not enough, you can increase it to maybe 3 milligrams or 4 milligrams. When you start getting to 5 milligrams, you're probably going to feel it. And standard doses are now kind of 10 milligrams, but any newbie, that's going to probably give them a very euphoric sensation. And so what you do then is you focus on the THC, and that's what's kind of guiding you, but then you pile on the CBD to help you with the THC. So if you need more THC to be able to get the effects you want, especially when you're talking pain relief, I firmly believe that you need THC for pain relief. You're going to want to increase that THC, but if it's giving you unwanted effects, you pile on more CBD. So if you're talking about ratios, you can start with a 1-to-1, which is 1 part CBD to THC. But if you need more CBD, ramp it up to say 3 milligrams, and that's giving you too much, euphoria that you don't want. You can use, say, a 3-to-1, a 4-to-1, a 5-to-1. So for your 3 milligrams of THC, if you're using a 5-to-1, you're getting 15 milligrams of CBD, which is offsetting it and balancing it.
Interesting.
And so you want to kind of move together and think about those. And again, everything's based on the THC and how's that making you feel. And if you need more of it to enable the relief, then you just pile on more CBD. And you can always, if you're looking for a ratio, so suppose you have a 1-to-1, sometimes the ratio products are hard to find, and they have 5-to-1, 10-to-1, 20-to-1, but suppose you want, say, an 8-to-1, and it's, you can't find those. You can always buy separate CBD, isolate CBD, or really what you want is a whole plant extract. Buy the CBD separately, use your ratio product, and then just take the pure CBD as a supplement.
Oh, great idea.
Wow.
So you can kind of combine those. So again, if you're talking now, if we go to the breast cancer and you say we want to dose or treat breast cancer, cannabis can help breast cancer in 3 different ways. You can help with the symptoms of the cancer or of the other therapeutics that you're getting to treat the cancer. And those are things like nausea and vomiting, especially from the chemotherapy, and fatigue. You have loss of appetite, and you have pain. And cannabis can help address all of these conditions that are associated with the cancer. They've also shown that using cannabis can help increase the efficacy of other cancer treatments, like the chemotherapy. So you can use the cannabis to, get better bang for your buck of the traditional cancer therapeutics. And there's plenty of research out there showing, there's clinical research showing that a lot of people with cancer are using cannabis to relieve their symptoms. And they're also using it in conjunction with other chemo therapeutics. Now, the third route is the idea that cannabis can actually treat the cancer itself, can kill the cancer, it can prevent it from spreading, cut off its food supply. There's plenty of preclinical evidence showing how this theoretically could work, but there's not any real clinical evidence showing that this is actually happening in people. And so it's certainly on the road. But most people shouldn't go out there and assume that they're going to use cannabis to cure their cancer. And so that's kind of for cancer in general. Now, for breast cancer is really interesting because the tumors tend to be very heterogeneous. And in particular, when you look at tumor cells, they vary tremendously as far as which receptors are on those cells. And people familiar with breast cancer might hear of ER category, which is estrogen receptor or progesterone receptor or human epidermal growth receptors. These are different receptors on the tumor cells. And different tumors have different patterns of these receptors. And depending on which of these receptors are on the cells, that tells you what type of treatments are probably going to be effective in addressing the cancer, because those receptors are like little doorways that enable you to activate the cell. So if there's a receptor there that's a doorway, you can use a chemical to enter into the doorway and affect the cancer cell. So what they found is a lot of the breast cancer cells have cannabinoid receptors on them. And when they do, then it's going to be more likely that cannabis is going to be able to treat or affect that cancer cell. And amazingly enough, one of the most difficult forms of breast cancer is triple negative breast cancer.
Mm.
And what that means is it doesn't have any of these other receptors on it, the ER, the PR, the HER2 receptors, which means they don't have any real way to treat it. And it turns out these triple negative breast cancer cells are more likely to have cannabinoid receptors on them, which means cannabis might actually be able to help them. So that's an amazing discovery.
Wow. Yeah, that's very interesting. I have a friend that has triple negative, knock on wood. She's been in remission for 5 years. So she hit her 5-year anniversary. But yeah, that's interesting. Friends, I did share there actually is a great insightful read from Ruth on the overview of research on cannabis for breast cancer. So definitely take a look at that and read through that. Ruth, we do have a question. Diana was just asking, how about multiple sclerosis? Do you have any recommendations for that?
From what I know about MS is it manifests very differently in different people. And in my brother, he gets pain. So while everyone probably gets pain, he gets a lot of pain, and it's very multifaceted. And so, Diana, I don't know what your manifestation is or the person that you love who you're asking about. But for pain, you definitely I believe you need THC. And again, if you want the higher doses of THC, but if it might come with some of these unwanted effects, namely getting high, then again, you want to pile on the CBD, but make sure that you're getting plenty of THC. In general, you're probably still, for the other manifestations, going to want some THC in there.
She's saying pain, spasms, and insomnia.
Yeah, insomnia, definitely THC, and CBN is very good for insomnia. And that's what happens is when all the cannabinoids degrade. So if you heat them or if you expose them to air, oxygen, they degrade, which means they turn into other compounds. And THC, as it ages, it turns into CBN, and it's much less psychoactive, and it'll put you right to sleep. So they're using that in a lot of the different sleep products. And so the joke is, if you have an old baggie of weed and want to sleep, then just use that. So CBN is good for sleep. And the thing is what's interesting is in a lot of cases, especially with pain and depression and whatnot, you get insomnia as a side effect. And anyone knows that when you're sleep deprived, everything else is much, much more difficult to deal with. Yeah. So if you can just address the sleep, it gives you more power, more resources to deal with the other different symptoms that you're dealing with. So definitely try and address the sleep if you can. That seems to be one of the easier symptoms to address.
And the body needs sleep to heal or feel better. So that makes
absolutely.
Yeah. We also have another question, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this program, but Monica's asking, what's your views on the pros and cons of Dr. Ben Kaplan's pediatric medical cannabis program? I'm not sure if you're familiar.
I know Ben Kaplan. I don't really know anything about his program, so I can't really opine on that.
Okay. All right. So thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit what do you feel like is the most critical element for people to understand when they're using cannabis as part of their wellness plan? So like, obviously there's dosing, but like, if you were to give a word of advice to somebody that was just getting started with cannabis, kind of what would be your top recommendations?
I actually have 3.
Okay.
So the first is cannabis is personalized medicine. And what that means is everyone is different, and it's really hard for each person to find the right product for them. So if you're new to cannabis and you come in and you try a product and it doesn't work, don't just give up and say cannabis doesn't work for me. Try and find, experiment, play around with different types of products to see if you can find one that's starting to work. And once you find something that's starting to work, then you can stick with that and move on. The second thing I would say, and I already kind of mentioned this earlier, is stick with whole plant products rather than isolates. You're going to, with the whole plant products, you can generally take lower doses, you can get better benefits and fewer negative side effects compared to isolates. And as a matter of fact, there are several drugs out there that are FDA approved. They're pharma drugs that are synthetic THC and they're isolates. And doctors prescribe them, and I keep reading about how patients start using them, but then they stop taking them because they don't like the side effects. And a lot of them will move on to whole plant medicine rather than the FDA approved drugs, which are, in these cases, not so wonderful. And the last thing I would say is make sure that you're using quality products. In cannabis, all cannabis products definitely are not created equal. There's a lot of scams out there. There's a lot of low quality stuff that are having extra additives that have residual solvents and whatnot. And this is something, if you're talking to your doctor or to a bud tender, and unfortunately, because each state is its own market, it's hard to find the same products in different places. Right. And even within a state, when you go to different dispensaries, you're going to find very different products. So it's hard to say, well, I recommend this brand because most people probably wouldn't be able to find it. So just make sure if you're talking to your bud tender dispensary person that you say that you're really interested in the high quality products. And one of the things in particular is all cannabis products are supposed to be tested. They're required to be tested.
Yep.
And so they're tested to see what's in them, what different combinations of compounds are there, but also to make sure there's no toxins in there. There's no pesticides, heavy metals, and other things. And if you go in and say to the dispensary, do you have these lab reports? They're called certificates of analysis. And the thing is, if you get the lab report, there's a lot of information. It might be complicated. You might not be able to understand it. But if you ask for it and they have it available, that's a really good sign. Because a lot of these places, they don't do them, or it's kind of shady, or it's not a quality product. They didn't do the testing. And so the lab results aren't available. So just the fact that they can produce one is a good sign. And so, and again, tell the dispensary person that you're looking for a good quality product that's been prepared, organically and whole plant and extracted appropriately and handled well. And that's really what you want to look for.
So is that not the case? So if you were to go into a medical dispensary, is that not the case that it's not all organic? I guess I just want a clarification on that. Like if you were, so I know I'm just curious because I have, well, and it's different, obviously, like Emily's in Massachusetts, I'm in Connecticut. So our dispensaries, like they might have Superman as a name. We don't have that here. We have plant, 3DG, and so it's just the labeling. So I guess if I were to go in and ask for high quality organic, I guess my assumption is that when I walk in there, everything's organic and high quality. But
yeah.
I feel like that might be the case.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. Interesting.
The thing about cannabis, and it's a shock for a lot of people, because you come in and you say, well, you want to make sure your stuff is tested. And people are like, well, what do you mean? Because, any medication and any food is already guaranteed to be safe. That's just how the system works. Yeah. And in cannabis is new. And while there are a lot of regulations, so many of them are not enforced. And so while you have all these laws, that doesn't mean that what you're getting is quality products. And especially when you're talking about CBD products and hemp CBD products, in most places, those aren't required to be tested.
Right.
And so while you think it might be healthier or better for you, there's actually, cannabis, the stuff with THC in it, is required to be tested. So while not everyone's following the regulations, there's probably a greater chance that your cannabis products are going to be safer than your hemp products. And in a lot of cases, you want to make sure that what's labeled on the product is actually what's in the container. And there have been a lot of studies done showing that a large majority of products, when they independently send them to the lab, they find that what it says on the bottle is not what's in the container.
Interesting.
Yes, I've heard that, and I think that's why, folks, we should really make sure we're buying our products at a dispensary as opposed to picking up CBD at a gas station or beauty salon.
Oh yeah.
So,
Oh yeah. And
So-
even not all the dispensaries are the same. I know there's people out there. One of the things I love about cannabis, the cannabis industry, I've never seen anywhere else. There are so many really, really passionate people. There are people there who literally have had their lives saved by cannabis, and they just want other people to have access to this amazing plant. So many people are really passionate, and a lot of these people are running dispensaries. If you can find one of these dispensaries run by these people, then stick with them because they're doing it right.
Absolutely. We've been really so fortunate to be able to have some of these folks even come on our program and talk about their dispensaries and their products, and those are really the ones that you want to gravitate towards for sure.
So this kind of actually leads into the next question, and it's probably so if you were new walking into a dispensary, what are kind of those questions? And kind of Monica just wanted to clarify, patients need to ask about quality even at a medical dispensary, correct? So walking in, okay. Yeah. What else should they be asking for as they kind of are venturing in for the first few times, getting comfortable with medical cannabis?
I would say make sure I would ask for balanced products, meaning not high THC products. So there's, as I was talking about the combinations and the extracts and stuff, and this is especially important in recreational dispensaries. When you go into recreational dispensaries, so many of the products have massive amounts of THC and very little CBD. And if you're new, you want at least a balance, say a 1-to-1, where you're getting 1 part CBD to 1 part THC, or perhaps higher, a 5-to-1, where you're getting 5 parts CBD to 1 part 5 parts CBD to 1 part THC. So when you go in, ask for more moderated or balanced products rather than just the high THC stuff. And again, you want to make sure that you're getting quality products, that there's no residual solvents in there. I think I already covered kind of the other issues that are important to ask for.
Ruth, I sometimes will be speaking to patients that are very, very new, and they don't really know where to start. And I know that what we have for products here in Massachusetts and Connecticut is very different than what you have out in the West Coast in California. But I tend to recommend starting off with, say, like a tincture. Would that be something that you might recommend just as a type of product to maybe start with?
Yes, I would. Now, gummies are wonderful. They taste good. They're fun to eat. Edibles, which is gummies, tablets, anything you swallow, is going to take an hour or 2 hours for you to feel the effects.
Right.
And that's not really helpful because then it's very difficult to try and get the right dosing. Now, gummy is good. And I mentioned that cannabis is personalized medicine. And what that means is the doses are not standard. So when you say, how much should I use? The answer is as much as you need. Now, patients are in the driver's seat, and they're not used to that. In regular system, the doctor says, take it 1 pill in the morning, 1 in the evening, and you just passively comply.
Yeah.
Now, the thing with cannabis, and especially the good thing about gummies, but especially with tinctures, is you take a full dose, whatever you call. And if you want a little bit more, you can take a little bit more.
Right.
With your doctor, you can't nibble off of your pill.
Right.
Quarter dose or half dose. If you have a tincture, you can take a few more drops. And if you have a gummy, you can bite off, say, a third or a quarter or whatever to get a little bit more and see if that works. But I would definitely recommend tinctures, sublinguals. There are fantastic new products out there called flash melts. And there's a company out here called Kinslips. And if people are familiar with Listerine strips, strips that they put under their tongue, that's exactly what they're like. So you put it under your tongue and they dissolve and they're absorbed by your mucous membranes. And that's a much more efficient way to do it. than to swallow it. You get onset within, say, 20 minutes or so. You also have greater bioavailability, which means more of the medicine that's in the product is actually going to make it into your body. Because when you swallow stuff, you have your stomach acids kill off a lot of it. And then you also, it goes through digestion and you metabolize it. And so it's changing it, and you only end up absorbing a very small amount. Now, another thing I would recommend is if you're using edibles, to take it with fat, because cannabinoids are absorbed, they're fat soluble, not water soluble. So if you have it with, say, some nuts or maybe, some whole fat yogurt, you'll get much better absorption. But again, I do like the tinctures because the onset is much faster.
Right.
And you can add to your dose, very easily, just taking a few more drops or whatnot.
Right. Yeah. I love recommending those too. I think they're great.
So Monica had a question about, are there any vape pens that are safe from a solvent perspective? We hear a lot about the oils, et cetera, added to the cartridges to work.
It's not just the oils, it's the cartridges themselves, like metal from the batteries or the coils in there can leach into, which is just, it's nasty.
I'm like, yuck, that's exactly, I'm like, I never even would think that. But yes, it makes sense.
Most of the problems that I've read about on the vapes are coming from black market products. They're not legal market products.
Right.
Now, part of the problem with smoking or vaping is we have a lot of research out there in traditional areas in terpenes and a lot of products. You ingest them, they're in supplements, they're in natural products out there. We have plenty of those out there, but all the research and all the natural products that we're used to taking, we swallow them or we consume them. We don't burn them and we don't inhale them into our lungs. And our lungs are delicate and they're not designed to process a lot of this stuff. And so a lot of the research that shows certain things have been safe and effective in supplements are not necessarily safe to inhale. And this is the problem with the vape gate with the acetate. It was vitamin E, for goodness sake, that ended up causing this problem. Yeah. It's just that, normally you don't heat oil, vitamin E oil, and it can't be absorbed in the lungs. So if you're looking at vape products, yes, there are safe ones out there. Again, you want to look for a high quality vape product and make sure, look at the way that they're processing it and try and get, say, CO2 extraction or some sort of processing technique where there's no residual solvents left in there.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. So I want to be respectful of your time. I could talk to you for hours, Ruth.
I know, like I said, we really need 3 hours to get everything in here.
So let's talk a little bit about, so we've dropped your book in here a few times, the Medical Cannabis Primer with the website, but you also have 2 businesses. Do you want to talk and tell us a little bit about what you do besides get up early for Medwell and Script?
Well, as I said, I'm an economist. And what I did before I came to the world of cannabis was healthcare and technology systems. And I look at market dynamics and value creation and help companies with essentially complicated systems figure out how to create and extract more value. Since I've come to cannabis, I've been now working mostly in cannabis, and I spend a lot of time, I've become very passionate about education, about transparency of information, making sure that the patients are getting all the information they need to make the right decisions. But I've also been working with technology companies in this kind of tracking and matching problem and figuring out how to create tools for customers, patients, users to help them figure out the best products that are going to give them the experience they want. So that's kind of what I've been up to.
Awesome. What was the name of the company again? I'm sorry, it was King. I'm just going to find their website and drop it in the chat here for the like the Listerine strips.
Oh, Kinslips, Kinslips.
Slips. Okay.
And unfortunately, I know they're available in California. They're up here in the Bay Area, Northern California, but I believe he's been expanding. He's not available in Nevada. I know that.
I like his tagline. We're all kin on the website. Yeah. All right. Ruth, thank you so much. Friends, I do see that there's some other questions in the chat, which I'll happy to answer afterwards. Here's that website for you to look more about kin slips. And if there's any, I've dropped Ruth's websites, her book. Ruth, my God, thank you so much for all of your time this morning. This was wonderful.
It's been a real pleasure.
And friends, also, Ruth is active on LinkedIn, so you're welcome to follow along with her and her travels. She has some great information on there that she shares regularly. So if you are catching the replay, friends, definitely leave a question. We will get back to you and get an answer for you. Thank you so much for all of the great questions today. Thanks, Emily, once again. And thank you so much, Ruth. It's been really a pleasure to have you. And like I said, mind-blowing today. All right, friends, have a great day. And we look forward to seeing you same time, same place next Thursday. And we'll see you then. Have a great day, everybody.